turfed and run over and stolen at night.
Oh, is that it?
I went through it.
They're really out there by themselves. Poking into the southwest or southeast of it. They're really thick. Stop trying to
Thank you so much. No, I know it.
No, I don't mind. Everybody plays by the same rules.
It's fun. I hate them. I absolutely hate them.
What's that?
I hate them.
And still like.
What a waste of time and energy. Signs don't.
I didn't actually.
Now,
The signs
that's why I can't
don't.
remember exactly what it is.
Okay, which is fine.
One does do it. It builds awareness. Yeah, name recognition.
It's good. I'm just gonna take a poll. I heard some people say 4 years.
I did this morning.
Well,
I think we forgot to rock our, okay,
Then they might
so,
come and sleep with mom and dad.
at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 5, 6.
Board,
Yeah.
all you would do then is report.
Never got
I mean, you're
grandkids,
raising-
so-
and you can
And they don't have to do
stop
anything over here?
No.
Oh, it's
Okay.
class, 'cause you know,
It's fine, so.
one granddaughter's 65.
So right now, the people are seeing.
Of course you did.
Sugar them up and send them back.
You're right, I think that was it.
That's fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Kids are fun.
We're enjoying it. Definitely adjustment.
Keep, so are you gonna?
Would you consider it? Yeah, right.
They all have their own
Quirks.
quirks.
Yeah.
Quirks. Both, yeah.
Thank you.
No, it's funny.
Yep.
Cause we don't look like it.
My son had to go to the dentist this morning.
Oh, no.
Oh, for a root canal. He's been fighting us for over a week.
The root canals are not fun.
Oh, no.
He said that to me this morning. Okay.
They are not
Thanks
fun.
for asking that
He
question.
said, well, I'm all numbed up.
The doctor about
He's so
like
funny.
substance abuse versus mental
Yeah,
health.
I
'Cause I was
do
wondering
too.
the same thing, like
Yeah.
what's the percentage?
The
mileage you plug in automatic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as well. I was curious on that. I wrote it down, like, if I get a chance, I want to ask
Oh,
her
yeah.
when she left.
And I'm guessing her chicken's different than my egg, but that's.
I agree.
Should put a question mark on
Yeah.
it. She'll fill it in.
Yeah, but I figured it's gotta be a huge factor.
Right.
Who
It
are we
is.
waiting
The one
for?
in Muskegon's a specialist.
Yeah, I've heard of evidence of that before, just from law enforcement standpoint. The mental health crisis is at least accompanied with a substance abuse crisis. Make sure we take care of that.
Yeah. I wanna go through that.
Okay, good.
Mr. Cheatham.
Yep.
Are we all set, Amy?
Yep.
Can I ask that everybody would rise for the Pledge of Allegiance with me, please?
Well, this
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I'd like to call to order the regular meeting for July 14th of 2022. And I'd ask for a roll call, please.
Mr. Beggs?
Here.
Mr. Morse?
Here.
Ms. Myatt? Here. Mr. Christians?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here. Thank you. I'd ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the June 23rd meeting.
I'll make that motion to approve the minutes of June 23 as published.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Do we have a support?
I'll support Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes as presented? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Is there a conflict of interest or closure regarding any agenda items from the commissioners? Hearing none, are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Morse.
Support Christians.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Public comment on the agenda items. Yes, sir.
Jim Draper, live in Hesperia, Michigan. So, one thing I wanted to comment on the Sheriff Department request for different equipment such as the computers. Mr. Walker, you mentioned, you know, spacing it out so they don't all come due at the same time. Just basic kitchen table budgeting. If you do a bigger purchase, you get a better deal usually, and then you can budget for it throughout the time. Like, say, car insurance, you pay once a year, saves you a lot of money. You stick a little cash in an envelope every month. When the big expense that you know is coming due is due, you've got it. So I think it makes more sense to just make the big purchase. Also, the police report that was filed on Peggy Whitman, as a taxpayer, I think it's kind of disgusting to me that money was used on lawyers to investigate her as a threat. Anyone that knows Peggy knows she's a Bible-believing Christian. She's not a physical threat to anyone. She might be a threat, but she would confront you on something that you've done wrong, which I think is appropriate. And then, you know, the time wasted by the state police, the prosecuting attorney, that's ridiculous. Another thing that's ridiculous is this gentleman that's running for office in the same district as me and Mr. Erickson. His address being called into question on that. Okay, if it's legitimate, it's legitimate. Mr. Erickson, you switched your address to be able to run in that district. If I try to mail you something, it comes back to me that it can't be delivered to that address. Doesn't happen. So, you know, there's some disconnects here. So anyway, I guess that's what I've got for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments at this time? Hearing none. Commissioner Morris, consider the proposed resolution requesting a change to the Michigan no-fault insurance as presented by AdvisorCare, number 22-67.
Mr. Commissioner Chairman Walker, I resolve to urge the state legislature to amend the Michigan Auto Insurance Reform Act to amend the reimbursement cap for auto accident victims in home health care. Whereas the Michigan No Fault Auto Insurance Reform Act of 2019 introduced a fee cap, which took final effect on July 1, 2021. This cap set percentage limits on how much residential care facilities, home health care providers, and other persons can be reimbursed for providing treatment care to auto accident victims. And whereas these reimbursement caps are 55% of the reimbursement rates that home care providers were collecting in 2019, whereas 55% of home health care providers' 2019 collections is an unsustainable reimbursement cap to continue caring for catastrophically injured individuals following an auto accident, and now therefore it be resolved, the Oceana County Board of Commissioners hereby urges the Michigan Legislature to amend the Michigan No Fault Auto Insurance Reform Act to address a sustainable fee cap. For example, Michigan Workmen's Compensation fee cap for ancillary services for home health care providers, in order to uphold these benefits that have been paid for by the survivors who are currently receiving and who will receive in-home long-term care when purchasing an unlimited PIP auto insurance policy paid by the... We're missing something there. I don't know how we missed that. Is that, let me check the other one here. Right.
Do you understand what that should state?
Yeah, it should be paid for by the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So paid for by the Michigan, I'm just going to look at my original here too, on the packet that was sent to us. Yeah, and somehow it got missed in there too. So, but paid for by the, what'd you say, sir?
Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association.
Thank you. Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association. Be it further resolved that the Oceana County Clerk is requested to forward copies of the adopted resolution to the Governor of the State of Michigan, the State Senate Majority and Minority Leaders, the State House Speaker and Minority Leader, the members of the Oceana County delegation to the Michigan Legislature, and the other 82 counties of Michigan as Commissioner correspondence.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any comments or questions? Call for the vote, please.
Mr. Morse?
Yes.
Ms. Mayette?
Yes.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
Mr. Christians?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Morris. Mr. Christians, consider the proposed resolution for the utility and topographical study in accordance with the USDA, number 22-68.
2268, thank you, Mr. Walker. Whereas the Oceana County Board of Commissioners, or Board, has recently taken steps to ask voters to consider a new additional millage for the purpose of constructing, equipping, furnishing, financing, and operating a new county jail and sheriff's department offices. And whereas Sheriff Craig Mass, current sheriff, and members of his staff are working with U.S. Department of Agriculture's Rural Development Division, commonly known as USDA, to provide a low-interest loan to fund the project, supported by a new additional millage if approved by the voters, and has submitted preliminary but required documentation to the USDA regarding the project. And whereas the USDA also requires that utility and topographical studies to be completed for the proposed property in which the project would be constructed, and by completing the studies now will accelerate any future USDA loan agreement. And whereas historically these studies can take up to 3 months to complete, and interest rates are subject to periodic increases, thus for every month in which the studies are delayed, Oceana County will be unable to lock in the lowest possible rate with the USDA. And whereas by completing the studies early and submitting them to the USDA, the studies have the potential to save taxpayers up to $300,000 in interest charges over the life of the loan. And whereas the estimated cost to complete the 2 studies is up to $40,000, and the Oceana County Administrator is recommending that the source of funds to pay for the studies could come from either the General Fund, Section 101, Unassigned Fund Balance, or the Public Improvement Fund, Section 445, and will be determined by the Administrator following the adoption of this resolution. And whereas, in accordance with a resolution regarding reimbursements that was adopted by the Board on May 26, year 2022, the cost of the studies is an eligible expenditure that can be reimbursed to Oceana County if voters approve the new additional millage and the USDA approves a low-interest loan to fund the project. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board authorizes the Sheriff and the Administrator to identify and select a qualified consultant to complete the studies, and following completion to submit the results to the USDA as part of the agency's loan application requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Do we have a support?
I'll support Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. We have a motion support. Is there any discussion or comment? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Christians?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Morse?
Yes.
Ms. Mayette?
Yes.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. Thank you. Ms. Mayette, consider the proposed resolution to approve the budget adjustment, allow for the purchase of equipment for the county administrator, number 22-66.
Whereas the Oceana County Administrator has requested a fiscal year 2022 budget amendment for the purchase of a new laptop, Bluetooth headset, scanner, and lift desk in the amount of $3,669.82, resulting from aged equipment and a new county administrator. And whereas the Oceana County Administrator is recommending approval of the budget amendment with additional funds coming from the general funds contingency account, now therefore be it resolved that the Oceana County Board of Commissioners authorizes the Administrator to amend the fiscal year 2022 budget technology and innovation fund in the amount of $3,699.82 for the purchase of a new laptop, Bluetooth headset, scanner, and lift desk for the county administrator to come from the general funds contingency account.
I'll second that. Morse?
Motion and support. Any questions or comments as presented? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Mayette?
Yes.
Mr. Morse?
Yes.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Christians?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. Mr. Beggs, consider a proposed resolution to approve the request for ARPA funds to the Sheriff's Department for the purchase of equipment, number 22-69.
Mr. Chairperson, I move to appropriate $71,972 to the Oceana County Sheriff's Department for the purchase of 17 laptops and 20 docking stations for installation in patrol cars, and $18,693 for the purchase of 7 tactical team bulletproof vests from American Rescue Plan Act funds. Furthermore, the Oceana County Board of Commissioners directs the county administrator to appropriate the ARPA funds for the purchase as described above.
We have a motion. Do we have a support?
Support.
Motion by Mr. Beggs, support by Ms. Mayette. Any questions or comments as presented? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
Ms. Mayette?
Yes.
Mr. Morse?
Yes.
Mr. Christians?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Erickson, consider a proposed resolution to approve the Child Care Fund budget for 2022 and 2023 budget year, number 22-70.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 Oceana County Child Care budget in the amount of $614,582, and to authorize the chairperson of the board and county administrator to sign the budget document. The fiscal year 2022-2023 child care budget represents an increase of $16,663 when compared to the prior year budget. The county's fiscal year 2022-2023 net share of the child care budget is $337,291, which represents an increase of $8,331 from the prior year budget.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Erickson. Do we have a support?
I'll support Christians.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Moved and supported. Do we have any questions or comments as presented? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Christians?
Yes.
Mr. Morse?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Ms. Mayette?
Yes.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Commissioner Hardy, payment of claims.
Okay, motion for payment of claims. Ambulance fund total, $1,411.03. FOC fund total, $4,412.07. Indigent Defense Fund total, $15,967.19. K-9 Fund, $1,115. Criminal Justice Training Fund, $416.89. ARPA Fund total, $36,776.75. Department of Veterans Affairs, $11,997.44. Technology and Innovation Fund, $19,906.97. Public Improvement Total Fund, $1,796. Foreclosure fund total, $135,881.10. Building department fund total, $36,426.23, for a general fund total of $657,663.76, for a grand total of $982,675.21.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Do we have a support?
I'll support.
Thank you, Mr. Beggs. Moved and supported. Any questions or comments? Mr. Hardy, I believe that's the largest one so far this year.
Yes, it is.
So, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Ms. Mayette?
Yes.
Mr. Morse?
Yes.
Mr. Christians?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, thank you. Reports from commissioners and department heads. Mr. Erickson?
Yes, Mr. Walker, at our last DHHS meeting that we held on June 27, I'm pleased to report that this past month the medical care had a net gain in income of $18,000. We've been losing money since this pandemic started, and costs have been controlled. Census has gone up. We have 79 beds full at the end of May, and it's very good to see that we're no longer running in the red there. The other thing I would like to make an inquiry, and hopefully at our next meeting we will be getting an updated report from Life. This second quarter is now past. We didn't receive a report for the first quarter. I'm hoping that we do get a report soon.
I sent a text message to Mark Myers about that, and Jim Stockhill was on vacation last week, and he indicated to me that they were going to shoot to be at the next meeting, the end of the month. And I've also asked them if they could give us just a brief synopsis of the call, the transports they did, and the total person hours that they spent at the electric forest, and also how many people the electric forest asked them to prepare for. Because they have to get the EMF numbers so they know how many people. And I asked them to add that to that report too. I think it'd be interesting for us to know how much time they actually spent there and how many transports they did. But I reached out to them, and I'll follow up with you when I get an answer. I'll follow up with him again this week.
Thank you, sir.
If we can do it. Mr. Christian.
Very briefly, I understand that dredging in the Pentwater Lake, and particularly in the channel, will be finished at the end of this week, and the different citizens of Pentwater have been very appreciative to see our contribution go forth. Also, the Crystal Valley Dam study has now been released. I've had a chance to look over it. I didn't get to the last several pages to make a definite opinion. Gary, you're welcome to comment on it, but...
I have no comment.
Okay.
Wow.
So I will, when we meet again...
Mr. Christian, if you, on the Crystal Valley Dam study, I asked the county administrator to forward that to Senator Bumstead's office, because Senator Bumstead at one time said that there were funds to renovate, and I just want to get an answer from the senator on that particular thing on page 10, I believe it was, if there are or are not funds. Because when we make a decision, it's best for us to have all of the information to make a decision. The engineers say no.
If I could only add to Ron, if I could, there is a community meeting on Monday at 7 o'clock at the Crystal Valley Township Hall.
Correct.
And Paul Lofton from Spicer will be presenting the data that he collected as part of your contract with him. So,
thank you.
Very interesting data. Yes, Paul.
Last night on the way home, I stopped by the Crystal Valley Dam, and there were 4 kids. They were all wet. They were sliding down as we did as when we were kids. They had the best time, and a little boy turned around and said, "Are you here to save the dam?"
Well, yeah, it all depends on the data, doesn't it, Mr. Morris?
The pocketbook.
Mr. Morris?
Yeah, so we, to piggyback on what Tracy said about Windsor Dick, I mean, that's pretty cool that we have our own little spotlight on page 2 in their quarterly newsletter, because there's so many things going on in Oceana County with West Michigan Shoreline Regional District Commission. And so because of that, we actually had a meeting this past Tuesday in this room, and we met to talk about how are we going to coordinate communicating all of these things, as far as making sure that we don't get fatigue from the public about all these surveys that people were asking people to fill out. So one of the areas and one of the ways we talked about doing that was having a presence at the county fair. And we had one last year, but this year there's going to be some very tactile ways that people can get involved, and Tracy's working on that with her office. So, but I think that's something to celebrate, that we have so much going on. When, from what I understand, a few years back there was nothing really that Windsor Dick was doing for us, and now they're doing quite a few things. And I would say Mr. McKean can take a ton of credit for that. Or he should take a ton of credit for that. Not that he will, but that's pretty. Like I said, that's something to celebrate. I do wonder, did the class happen? The EMS class happen? And how many? Does anybody know?
There were 3 people signed up for the EMS class, and they were going forward. And Mark Meyer spent Thursday afternoon the opening of the electric forest, and he and I went down to the forest area at the treatment center, the triage center in the area, and he was actually looking to talk to all of his people who were working there. And he told me if there was one person, they were still going forward with the class. And they're going to do a different, when they get into this fall, when the schools are back in session, they're going to do another one and hopefully generate more interest going to the counselors in the schools.
Okay.
But they have a plan going forward, and they
Good.
plan on being here, to answer your question.
Great. Did you grab a guitar and get on stage when you were at Lecture Forest too?
Boy, that'd be ugly, wouldn't it? So,
and that's what I
Mr. Beggs.
I don't believe I have anything to report.
Thank you, Mr. Beggs. Mr. Hardy?
Yeah, just one thing, kind of mentioned it briefly. Chairing the ARPA committee, we have a meeting coming up on the 20th. We received a lot of applications, and we're dividing those into categories. And we have kind of I'm going to call it maybe a grading or a scoring schedule that we're going to go through on each one of those. We've had great participation from all the committee members up to this point. I do think, because of the complexity of some of the applications and stuff, it's probably going to take more than one meeting to go through. But we are moving forward and working on that. Just wanted to update everybody. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Ms. Mahan?
Well, I know we've all seen the sheriff and undersheriff and possibly the judge at townships meetings and other meetings in the county. And I want to thank Michael and Peggy Cook for their work on the proposal to build a new jail. And as you've heard before, this board has been talking for the last 6 years I've been on it that we need a new jail, and we've known that. And one thing that I want the public to understand is that we've known the jail was deficient. Dr. Sobey, in one of the last meetings he was here, he was a little perturbed with us because in all these surveys all these things that we fill out, and we as a commission and as a community have filled out, and as the priorities for this county, data-driven decisions is always at the top. And he was a little perturbed because he thought he always gives us data, and we said we had to tell him, yes, you do. We are not upset with the amount of data that we're getting. We know that you are providing it. It's just a reaffirmation of this board that that is how it wants to make decisions. That is what we were doing. When Honeywell came through with actual data that showed how deficient and what areas the jail was deficient, that is when we started moving. And that data drove, I hear, why are we rushing, why are we rushing? It's the data that has sparked this project. And anything we do to slow it down is futile. I mean, not futile, it's unnecessary. As long as we have the data and we have the approval of the voters, and we need to make it safe for our corrections officers, for the community, and for everyone involved in this community to live here. And I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Ms. Mann. Tracy, do you have anything for us?
I don't have anything further.
Amy?
No.
I'd just like to say that the discussion was very, very good that we had between members, and I want to thank the members for their putting in their opinion on different things. You know, it's not that we don't have the same common goal, it's just how we get there. And this was a very good discussion that we had again today, and I want to thank the other board members for that discussion. So, public comments.
Sure. Jim Draper from Hesbury, Michigan. I agreed that we need a new jail and everything. Out of curiosity, if we've known for 6 years we needed a new jail, how much money is saved up to put towards it at this point? That's my question.
Thank you, Mr. Draper.
Yeah.
Mr. McKean?
Gary McKean, live in Mears, Michigan. I come as a citizen. A little while back we talked about a county logo, which we have. We talked about a tagline. So I'd like to consider a tagline that I kind of dreamt up, if you will. The center of all things good. The center of all things good. So possibly a tagline for Oceana County. I think it's a good place to be, and it is a center for so many people that really have a lot of good things that happen. So if I could just comment also, the jail, part of my background, I guess, is economic development, and the jail is really an economic development for the county. I think that gets overlooked significantly. This is an investment in the community, and counties that have new facilities like this are looked upon very favorably by other people when they come into a community, that they are doing something progressive in the county. And this is something that would really, I think it might be the largest public works program we've ever done in the county as a county. I don't know that for a fact, but roughly $30 million of a building is pretty significant for us. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McKean. Are there any other public comments?
Yes. Peggy Whitman.
Good afternoon.
On Hilltop and Hart. I would like to make a couple additional comments on the threat complaint that Mr. Walker and Mr. Erickson and the board brought against me. I sent a letter to Chairman Walker, and he refused delivery of the letter. Subsequently, he led the board to file a complaint on me as a citizen when he never even saw or read the letter that I wrote to him. Outside of this meeting room, Chairman Walker approached me to explain why he refused delivery of the certified letter. When I asked why he led the board to file a threat complaint against me, he totally denied having anything to do with it. Now, how can someone be a chairman of a board, call in an outside attorney, have a closed session, and have nothing to do with that? So I have to look, if you had nothing to do with it, Mr. Walker, I would have to look to Mr. Erickson as the leader of that decision by the board to bring a threat complaint against me. The letter from the prosecuting attorney, I didn't mention it when I showed you the letter. His letter totally supports my position on my ability as a citizen to come to these meetings and speak my thoughts on county government issues. But I have to read it. I have to read it to you from our prosecuting attorney. It's the position of some members of the board that this violates the rule that the comment must relate to the topic before the board. I've previously opinioned that, one, I'm not sure it violates the rule because it is, while broader, something that affects the topic at hand. And two, I'm not sure that it's an enforceable rule. The board has, in response to her statements, called her out of order, declared her time to be forfeited, and when she persisted, declared her to be in contempt of the board. These are things you have accused me of. Due to Ms. Whitman's perception of the actions and positions of certain board members and the county administrator, she has taken to formally complaining in writing. Ms. Whitman claims that the board has violated her First Amendment rights and otherwise acted in an unconstitutional manner. In her correspondence, Ms. Whitman urges or demands certain people resign. It is assumed that the correspondence, it's blacked out, but it has to be Mr. Walker, is the same. But he did not accept the letter. Her letter says that if they fail to comply, it would force me, here's my threatening language. I just want to make sure we've all heard the threatening language, in quotes, force me to take the next step available in returning our county to a constitutionally run county. That's what the threatening statement was in my letter. First, there is no crime of threat to public official. I have included the charges that incorporate a threat as an element to the offense. I would put forward that Ms. Whitman is urging or attempting to compel a certain action. If this were done maliciously through threats of violence, the charge would be extortion. The statement made by Ms. Whitman in a vacuum would not be definite enough to be understood by a person of ordinary intelligence as being a threat of injury. Ms. Whitman does not, in her letter, define what the next step available would be. An act of violence would not restore constitutional deficiencies. If we add to this analysis what is well known about Ms. Whitman, it further takes us away from assertions that she is threatening violence. Ms. Whitman is a well-known member of the community. Ms. Whitman is known to be very religious and involved in political and community events. Ms. Whitman has run for public office, school board, and availed herself of the judicial process. Ms. Whitman has no known history of violence. Her letter tries to point the reader in the direction of her fondness for court action. A person familiar with her could reasonably interpret her comment as being a threat of a lawsuit or some other lawful political act, i.e. running for a seat on this board. Next, if we look to her own explanation, Ms. Whitman tells the trooper that she would like to resolve her issues by talking with the people involved. And if that does not work, maybe running for a seat on the board. This explanation is very consistent with her history and how she typically conducts herself. There is no actual indication
Ms. Whitman, your
that
5
she
minutes are up.
has
I ask that you restrain.
any intent
Ms.
to
Whitman,
commit
you-
violence, and there is ample evidence
I call to order, Ms.
exculpate
Whitman.
Ms.
Your 5
Whitman
minutes
from
are
any
up.
assertion.
I call
Mr.
to
Walker,
order.
that's a
I will
violation
have
of the Open Meetings
this
Act. I'm
discussion.
going to sit down
You-
because
you
you
have-
get the gist of the
you
letter.
have 5
I hope
minutes.
that you shared all of this
You
information
have-
with everybody
Thank you
on
for
this
your comment,
board.
Ms. Whitman.
Thank you.
Please sit down. Thank you. Are there any other public comments? The meeting is adjourned.
So do you need a ride to New Era? Pardon me? Do you need a ride to New Era?
No, no. No, I gotta bring my Suburban out there, they wanna change out the airbag.
Oh, I see.
Passenger side. It's like, what's it, 2,000?